taken and the camera, the equipments that have been used. Of course, I'm not mentioning any apparatus theory or any kind of such theories and scopophilia, male gaze, and normally this Laura Mulvey all comes to the stage once we begin to start discussions with films. But generally what happens in the case, in the field is a bit different kind of a scenario. And once we talk about the industry, the film industry, especially in Malayalam, we have actually seen a new collective emerging out of the situation. So there were many discussions. The first thesis of Laura Mulvey got published in 1984, but we got to know about a kind of a collective like Women in Cinema Collective in Malayalam for the first time, I mean just 5 years back, right? So we have been discussing these theories for some 25 or 50 years, but in practice, we have just seen or witnessed this kind of an evolution in the last 5 years. Right? So this is a major difference once we see cinema as a part of cultural studies. We talk a lot about theories, but we cannot actually see anything in practice. Right? But once it comes to the case of sociology in cinema, the difference is we are more focusing on the practices that is actually happening around cinema, in and around cinema. So this is what my title is about, and this is on and off the screen, imagining realities or realizing imaginations. I think the synopsis is already circulated among you, right? So this is only a synopsis, right? So in order to just to restrict myself in my presentation, I'll just see or I'll just like to know what all things are necessary before we are going to cinema. What all things usually happens once we go to cinema. It's not about cinema, but it's about cinema, right? So this kind of a dichotomy is already there, right? And what do we do when we go to cinema? See, what are the processes that are involved once we go to cinema? First of all, the cinema has to be selected. The one cinema has to be selected, right? You select a cinema of your choice, right? But if you are going to a cinema as a group with your family or with your relatives or with your partner or with your lover, right? So who is making this choice of the cinema? Do you really feel any kind of a discussion or any kind of an agency that is actually working in between in selecting the cinema of your choice, right? The first thing, right? Then what about the theater that we really want to go, right? So there are multiplex, of course, a multiplex in a mall, a multiplex as such, not in a mall, right? And an A-class theater somewhere near to your house, right? And there are not many things in which now we have this opportunity of seeing the same cinema from different theaters, right? Some cinema halls are a little bit, small, and some are huge in some sense, right? So, do you really make any kind of a choice or any kind of a discussion before choosing the cinema theater that you really wish to go? Right. So first case is about the cinema, and second case is about the theater, right? And once you go to the theater, now that we have this opportunity of taking the tickets in online, we don't have separate queues, right? So in most of the cases, we cannot see any queues or any lines in any of the cinema halls, right? Which was not the case just before some 15 years. So what would have made this kind of a difference, right? So we cannot see separate lines for male, separate lines for women, right? But what are the concerns that we really face once we start selecting the seats? Especially my question is to the women who actually goes to the cinema, and if there is an online reservation facility available, which seat would you prefer? A side seat or the seat in between or the middle seat? Side seat, right? So this is from where I really want to be. So why people are making this choice to sit at the side of the row, not the middle of the cinema theater? And it is seen and it is already scientifically proven that the best seat to sit to watch a cinema is the middle seat. Right? And you know the science and you know everything, but the social is not allowing you or permitting you to select the best seat, right? You know the best, but you are not permitted to select the best. So what really prevents you in making this kind of selection, right? And in the first case, you are not selecting your cinema. In many cases, somebody else is making the choice. And about the cinema theater, you really want to go. Maybe in some cases you are selecting the theaters. In some other cases, somebody else is making the choice, right? And in the third case, it is not you who is actually bothered about the best seat, but you are bothered about yourself, not the best seat, right? So see this considered to be a kind of a property which can be associated with the cinema, right? Which is normally done in cultural studies, right? Right. So cinema is nothing which is actually seen on the screen, but cinema has a connect with the seats also in the hall. This is my argument, right? In the hall, because once you choose a cinema, you are choosing a kind of a particular social in which you are actually familiar with, right? In the case of an adult movie or a soft porn movie, right? How many women would get a chance to go to the cinema? I really remember the case when Kama Sutra was released, right? People were quite eager to go to the cinema, of course, right? We were in the colleges. We really want to go to the cinema, but how many women we could actually see in the cinema halls for such a film, right? So what happens or what really prevents women not going for such a film, right? Is it because they don't really like to watch the cinema? As in the case of the seats, they know that this also is a cinema and this has to be seen, but they are not permitted and they are not really allowed to go, or they have some kind of an inhibition, right, by which they are not really in a position to go to the cinema, right? What happens to the theater hall when there are only men inside the hall? And if a soft porn cinema is screened? What if only one woman is present in the cinema hall and all the rest of the seats are occupied by men and you are watching a film like this? What happens if half of the hall is filled with women and half with men and if you are watching the cinema? Right. So this is, as I said in the case of seats also, see, this is also a kind of a concern that I really want to put forward, right? And what about the time that we really prefer to watch the cinema? The cinema is already starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? In most of the cases, and you can even go to the cinema at 12 o'clock in some of the mega cases of mega cinemas. You can even go to the cinema at midnight. But what time would you really prefer? What time would you prefer? Right? Of course, you have the privilege of choosing at night. But if you are preferring it to go at night, then you should at least have to have a bicycle or a scooter or your own vehicle with you. What about others who are not having a private vehicle, who are really depending only on public transportation, right? So this is a kind of a particular case that I am speaking about, right? So this is not about cinema, but it's about cinema, right? So these are the simplest things that are actually involved, which are actually involved in the process of engaging or going to the cinema, right? This is not really much studied. I think we have studies related to this area. And if there are researchers inside this hall, then I would just suggest people not just to see the cinema as a text, not just to see it as a visual text, not to see it as a kind of a technological innovative thing, but just go to the field and go and find out what is really happening in the field, right? And what about people who are thinking of deciding about a particular theme and how would they actually plan the location, right? what are the criteria by which they are selecting the location, right? The script is a kind of an imagination, as we all know, right? Script is something fictional in nature, and we all know that in order to convert this fiction into a kind of a visual language, we need to have or we need to find a location, right? And how this location is planned. So what are the concerns that they usually face, right? So this is, on one side we have the imagination about a particular thing, and on the other side the reality is there, right? And I would just invite you to the case in which the Malayalam cinema, Neelakuil, right? Neelakuil, which has won several awards, released in the year of 1954, right? Was actually claiming in the poster, please. If I am taking or crossing the limits of time, please update me, please inform. No, Neelakuil. Yeah. So this is the cinema released in the year 1954, which is Neelakuil, right? And what is actually written under this title Neelakuil is Pudiya Malayala Samukya Chitram. That means the new social film, new social cinema in Malayalam, right? So the cinema itself claimed that it is a social cinema, right? Social cinema. You just skip to the next one. Yeah, please. Please zoom in. Yeah. This is the film that was released in the year 1955, just after this Neelakuil. And this cinema has been, released from the inspiration of the bicycle thieves, right? The first film was claiming it to be social, and the second was claiming itself to be new wave, right? So the cinema has a drastic change, which is actually appearing onto the field within 1 year's time, right? The first government in Kerala was sworn in 1956 only, right? But before that, this kind of a change was happening in Kerala, right? So this newspaper boy, released in the year 1955, claims it to be a new wave cinema, right? So social realism to the new wave, right? So this question, what I'm actually posing just before, that this kind of a contradiction or this kind of a dichotomy between the social realism fabric and the idea of cinematic imagination on the other side was quite present well before the state was actually declared as or named as Kerala, right? And the next slide, please. No. Yeah, this one. This is another cinema in Malayalam, which is titled as Archa, right? You know, it is one of the films which actually try to depict the character of Archa in the Northern Ballads, right? Northern Ballads means Vadakkan Paattugal in Malayalam, right? Northern Ballads. So this cinema tried to portray the real life of Archa. Archa was a heroine or was a kind of a lady who had really mastered all the martial arts and was the first bold and brave lady in the history of Northern Ballads, right? So why this cannot be called as a biopic of Archa? This is my question. So we know about Archa, that she was there in the real social reality of Kerala. But once the cinema was released, Archa, we are not actually calling it as biopic. So there is some kind of a missing things or some lapses are obviously present in between this cinema and the Northern Ballads, right? Now, no, So this is another cinema which was released just after the period of emergency. See, this has a political importance as well, right? This was released just after the emergency was withdrawn in the year 1978. It was directed by the popular director I.V. Shashi. So let me go and read a study about this Avalude Rao, which is Her Night. Right. So I'm quoting from the book of Navneeta Mukil, and book is titled as Unruly Figures. The chapter 1 is tracing the prostitute between excess and containment. I'm quoting, quote, a film poster of a young woman dressed only in a flimsy white shirt that clings to her body. White hair scattered around her face as she pulls up the shirt to examine a scratch on her thigh. Glass bangles on her hands, lowered eyes that do not meet the viewer's gaze. A black and white news photograph of a woman's dead body in a police lockup. Her rope-like sari forms the noose around her neck. The camera is positioned behind her body. A long strand of plaited hair and dangling feet meet the viewer's eyes. I repeat. I.V. Shashi's cult film Avalde Rao Her Nights in 1978 on the life of a prostitute. The film was a huge hit at the time of its release, and there are multiple contentious circuits through which it has lived on in public memory. So once we start to call this as a sex work or sex workers, the cinema was released in the year 1978. Right. The Avalude Ravugal debate, in conjunction with other pre-1990s political and cultural events, specifically the death of Kunyibi. So there was a lady, Kunyibi, who actually committed suicide in a police station, was also a prostitute, and the reason for her murder or suicide, whatever it is, was supposed to have a kind of a connect with the cinema, right? So the idea of social on one side and the cinematic imagination on the other side has been so curious and so surprising in the early days of cinema, especially in India itself. Now let me go to other cinemas, the prominent cinemas in India. I will just name a few so that if you could get a chance, those who are actually studying film studies, then they could really go to that cinemas, right? The first cinema I would suggest is the cinema Nagari, which was actually directed by Ritik Ghatak. Right. The Pandey Panjali was released only in 1955, but 3 years before Ray started this kind of a cinema, Ghatak had already produced or directed the cinema Nagari. Right. And after this, he directed Megha. All of us know what happened to Megha, which actually is a kind of a critique against the freedom, right, that we boast about, right. So the critic on one side about the social, right, about the real thing, the freedom that we have acquired on one side, and the critic on the other side in the cinema, right. So the social reality on one side and the cinematic imagination on the other side. So again, a kind of a conflict or a rift, right? Like in the case of Avalude Rao, and like in the case of a rift between Neelakuil and the other cinema newspaper boy, right? Then the other cinema is Ajandrik, right? And in this Ajandrik, you may see that the hero is really passionate or in love with a Chevrolet car, right? The hero is not in love with anybody else, but he is in love with a Chevrolet car. This is the thread of the cinema. This is the one line of the cinema, right? It was just after the third wave of industrial revolution that the cinema appeared, right? This also has a kind of a connect with the social, and this has a kind of a cinematic imagination as well, right? Then comes the cinema boot polish, you know, Raj Kapoor. Then Raj Kapoor's another film, Jaagte Raho, right, in 1957. Then the other cinema, Garam Coat, in 1955. Then an Oriya cinema, Madhira Manisha, right? Then the Marathi cinema, Sadi Manse in 1965, right? Then Yarikada Alindam in Tamil, directed by Jayaganthan in the year 1966, right? And this is with this kind of a history that I am actually raising this argument or quite skeptical about the idea or the rift between this social imagination or the social reality with the cinematic imagination, right? So this is about the crux of my paper. Am I allowed to speak 5 minutes more or shall I stop now? 2 minutes. So it's okay. So, so this is, and in this kind of a situation in which I am actually dealing, or I am actually presently I am doing a field work in Tamil Nadu, right? My question is about how people would be seeing the cinema in which they are the actors unknowingly, right? Right. If a particular location is found and if a cinema is being produced by the help and support of the people from a village or a city, then what if they go to the cinema and see the same place, the same region, the same language, the same slangs, same kind of architecture, same kind of buildings, same kind of spaces in or on a screen? What would be their response, right? So it's a kind of an experience that I am actually I'm focused, right? So it's a kind of an experiential kind of a study. Then now I take the privilege and I take the uh, freedom just to say a few kind of a theoretical jargons in some sense, right? So this is about the social that I'm speaking about, and this has nothing to do with theory as such, but I'm speaking about the experience, right? The experiences and the practices, right? So the larger framework in which I just try to engage these discussions are the ideas proposed by Martin Heidegger, Merleau-Ponty, right? And Husserl, right? And this larger framework is nothing but phenomenology. Right? So this is actually done with this framework of phenomenology, which is a tradition emerged out of the work of Robert Gray, the field of communication, right? So he has actually, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Robert Craig and his work of field of communication. If you are not, I suggest and I recommend you just to go through it, in which there are 7 traditions he is actually discussing about. The first one is about rhetoric, right? Right. And the second one is about semiotics, then this phenomenology, then this critical tradition is there, then socio-cultural tradition, socio-psychological tradition, and this kind of traditions are there. So in which tradition, in which framework we are actually relying upon, and which can actually give a more productive kind of a finding or an outcome of our research is the real question. So with that, I'll just try to conclude my talk, and if you have any few questions, and I'll try to answer it, and after the session is over, and I'll just make sure that at least the question is clarified in some sense, even if I am not answering to the precise way, right? So thank you for giving me this opportunity, inviting me to this city of Mangalore, where I haven't got many opportunities to come. So thanks a lot for the invitation from the side of NITTE, Department of Communication and Journalism, Dr. Anisha and Dr. Pradeep and rest of the professors. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Lam. Now I request Dr. Pradeep to present his case.
Namaste to all. I don't take much time because you are running out of time, and there will be a lot of sessions also. So my topic is an idea of Kannada Hindi cinema or Kannada Hindi film. I don't know how much the students are familiar with the idea and imagination of an indie cinema, especially in the context of India and especially in the context of Canada. Even I don't know how many people are watching cinema in these days, because the French master and Achu, Godard once said, that is to in 1980s, that cinema is dead. Now I think cinema is almost dead. Now it is not the time of cinema, but it's the time of reels. So it's the space of reels. Exceptionally, some places are doing exceptionally exceptions, I mean, like Kerala, but I don't know, what exactly going on in Kerala, including in festival circuits. I think some 8 to 10 years, one report, appeared in Hindu, one of the very famous and popular, loved, daily newspaper of Kannada, that about a release of a experiment cinema in Kannada. Okay, and the reporter cleanly, made a judgment that and called it as a new wave cinema. Okay, so it was not the one example. There were a lot of examples and instances in which a lot of journalists used to call these kind of experimental films as new wave cinema. But if you look into the semiotics, politics, and the aesthetics, so-called aesthetics of new wave cinema, it is somewhat distinct. I hope being a media studies student or even film studies students, you are aware that the idea of French new wave contributed the whole phenomenon known as new wave across the globe, including India. I think one of the very famous proponent and theorists on new wave cinema is Anthony D. Baki. He used to categorize, he used to featureize new wave cinema in a very distinct manner, and in two very important features. One, the new wave is an intellectual and political, philosophical conversation. It's a physical conversation and it's an intellectual conversation. We know that on 1950 and 1960, the idea of French new wave cinema started with a very interesting film journal known as Cahiers du Cinéma. Cahiers du Cinéma. And also, it was a conversation, physical, intellectual conversation happened between various filmmakers like Francis Truffaut, Godard, Agnes Varda, and one of the very famous seminal classical film theorist André Bazin. So he beautifully puts and calls this as a primary or fundamental of a new wave cinema. So if you imagine and if you invoke that particular feature into Indian context, even in Kannada context, okay, you don't find that kind of conversation, as per as that was happened in the case of French or Europe, or even in the case of Brazil or Brazilian no film. So it is very hard to replicate or apply the same sort of politics, aesthetics, and the language and the idea of French new wave in Kannada and in India. So that's why in recent days, some of the scholars on film, French, Indian new wave, like Moinak Vishwas, who is in Jadavpur University, and Ashish Rajadhyaksha, another theorist on cinema, they are thinking, they are giving, formulating a new idea that there was no new wave film in India, but there was a new cinema in India. So they are restructuring the whole idea of new wave cinema in India. So the idea of new wave cinema is totally different, and you don't find that kind of physical and intellectual conversation, the French condition kind of intellectual conversation in Kannada. So we have films loosely or sometimes perfectly based on socialism. Okay, that's it. Apart from that, we don't have much idea and our thought which exactly looks like a French new wave. Another very important, fundamental feature of new wave film, which is categorized or characterized by Anthony D. Baki is youthfulness and socialism. It's a very, very important and integral feature of a new wave cinema. That also, as already I discussed, that also lacks in Indian and especially in Kannada context. We have very loosely formulated films on the basis of socialism than fully committed and fully shaped cinemas on the basis of on the ideology known as socialism. So that's why there is a huge difference between new wave cinema and being film studies students and media studies students. We are aware of lot of these nomenclatures like achieved cinema or achieved or indie cinema or avant-garde cinema and parallel cinema, experimental cinema. But we don't know what exactly it is. And as earlier I said, in the case of Hindu report on a experimental cinema and hailing that as a new wave cinema, the journalist also lacks the vocabulary and the basic idea of the indie cinema and including new wave cinema and avant-garde cinema and many more. And another very important problem is, whenever we apply the idea of, cinema grammar and film criticism into Indian context and Kannada context, we always feel and find difficulty, in applying all those language and terminologies. So that's why I clearly, make a statement that so between these phraseologies there are a lot of, differences, philosophical difference, political difference, and even basic or foundational difference of understanding of an idea of cinema. Most of the time, and if you look into the history of Kannada cinema, we have got lot of confusions while recording the history or registering the history. Because while discussing, lot of people, we call that the idea of Girish Kasavalli's films as new wave cinema. But if you are very much keen and very much seriously look into the films of Girish Kasavalli, the idea and politics, aesthetics and politics of Girish Kasavalli never goes beyond neo-realist school of filmmaking of 1950s, European context. I think that is for South India also. We have very rare, new wave kind of filmmakers. For example, I think John Abraham, in the case of Kerala, he can be called and he can be, definitely termed as a new wave filmmaker because of two reasons. One, as earlier I said, he almost introduced and applied all the semiotics and idea of the French new wave cinema. Apart from that, he was very much liberal and he had a very important collective known as Odisha Collective, in which he traveled every village and showcased his films and major classical films and lot of films across the nook and corner of Kerala villages. Apart from that, I think we have Aravindan, John Abraham's Amarian, John Abraham's the Donkey in the Agrahara, and I think G. Aravindan's Tampu, the circus, I think can be termed as one of the very interesting model of new wave cinema. But again, if you discuss Adur's cinema, that resembles with the idea and semiotics of the Kasarwalli cinema of Kannada, and that is totally different from the idea and politics of new wave cinema. So these are the very, very important, differences between the various phraseologies. Always goes either simultaneously or nearby, but there are huge differences between these phraseologies and even conceptions. So next very important, segment I want to discuss. Then is there an independent cinema or indie cinema in India? This is a very, very important question. As earlier I said, I was quoted a Hindu report on experimental cinema. These days, lot of journalists and even film theorists also, they are claiming and the labeling lot of films as indie cinema. But if you look into the definition and major features of indie cinema, you know, you know, there is always the usage is always a kind of misnomer. For example, I can take a very interesting definition of a filmmaker himself and film teacher and theoretician also, Dibakar Banerjee. Hope you have seen some of his films. I quote a quotation from Dibakar Banerjee. He says, "We need cinema that takes on head-on the issues of, according to me, racism in India, independence from objectification of women, independence from jingoism, that is to national jingoism of Bharatiyata, independence from organized religion." So this was a very interesting statement on indie cinema by Dibakar Banerjee. Okay, and there are a lot of definitions and statements on indie cinema also. I don't want to discuss all those things. But if you look into, if you essentialize this definition, then you will come to know what was the, what is the very important, traits of, what are the very important, fundamentals of indie cinema. So the idea of indie cinema, Indian indie cinema, mushroomed especially after 2010. Okay, 2010 to 2021, this was hailed as the heyday of Indian indie cinema, especially the cinemas like Peoply Live, Udon, LSD, Dhobi Ghat, I Am, Kaushik Mukherjee's Gandu, one of the phenomenal cinema which inaugurated the idea of indie cinema in India, and Masan, Anand Gandhi, Shipati Shivs, and lot of such films, ideally inaugurated the idea of indie cinema in India. So these films are basically different from, they are a kind of reactions to the contemporary Bollywood. That is a basic, fundamental premise in which the idea of indie cinema has been emerged in India. Different from Bollywood blockbusters, they are basically displaying diversity of form, diversity of style, and unconventional and elective content. Filmmaking started from multiple Indian urban centers. And like Bollywood, the idea of indie cinema not only started as a reaction to Mumbai, but it has started in a lot of urban cities, small urban cities across India. Okay, so these are the very important, fundamental ideas on which the premise of indie cinema has been generated or formulated. Apart from this, we can also, list out some of the very important themes like gender-based violence, women-centric perspectives, LGBTQ, unregulated neoliberalism, predatory capitalism, caste discrimination, child labor, human trafficking, religious fundamentalism, social political repression of ethnic and religious minorities, economic inequality, state corruption, and lot of such themes has been picked up by this Indian indie cinema. So another very important filmmaker, Ajay Bahan, who was one among the one very important filmmaker among Indian indie filmmakers, who has done BA Pass in 2012. He has made a very interesting statement on the idea of indie cinema, that a reaction to Bollywood that thrives on its own non-confirmation of that style, therefore reflects the binary template, Bollywood versus independent Indian cinema. So these are the very important statements and understanding related to the idea of indie cinema. So next very important thing I need to discuss, while acknowledging its versatile nature when transposed to an Indian cinema context, the malleable term indie is nonetheless a utilitarian, accommodating and adaptable reference point. Indie is always multiple, contingent, context dependent, versatile and palatable experience. it also very much of urban or even urban elite we can, or one can say, or even middle class, or even kind of bourgeois. You know, they proclaim that, we are making cinema, we are picking, something, some content for the people, that is to common people, normal people. But it's not like that. That's why one of the very important theorists on Indian cinema, Rachel Dreyer, she used to, theorize it as the Indian indie cinema as hatke cinema, multiplex cinema. Okay. Another very important, Rajani Majumdar, who is teaching teaching cinema in JNU. According to Ranjani, the idea of Indian cinema, including Kannada cinema or even Malayali indie cinema, the so-called Malayali indie cinema or Kannada cinema, is an urban fringe. It's an urban fringe. So another, film consultant, Meenakshi Shetty, used to say, it's a mindy cinema. It's something related to middle class, something related to the middle class mind, and so that's why it is known as middle class mindy cinema. So another very important theoretician, Gopal Gehlova, he used to say it as new Bollywood. It's not fully, a reaction to Bollywood, but it's a new Bollywood. So in this juncture, I even use the very interesting statement by one of the very important Indian indie filmmaker, Kaushik Mukherjee, that an indie is always an exercise to be free of any hostile or disruptive forces doing the film's creation. So this is what. But if you look into, the whole idea and experience of indie cinema is concerned, Kannada indie cinema and Indian indie cinema is concerned, this is not a normal experience, but it's a very much urban elite experience. It's very much of, hatke, new Bollywoodian kind of experience. So in this juncture, I, my last segment, and I stop in this particular point. I ask and raise a very important question: is there a Kannada indie cinema? That's a very, very important question. I think, after discussing all these very important and fundamental elements and features of Indian indie, the invocation of Indian indie, I clearly say, it is very hard to pursue a Kannada indie cinema. For example, recently Hyderabad University asked me to write a monograph on the idea of Kannada indie cinema, and they have given 13 very important films which appeared after 2012 to 2021. Especially the films are like Lucia, Pink Yelly, 17 Years, Shivamba, Photo, Titi by Ram Reddy, Pedro by Natesh, a very important film, Mithya, and none of her. So these are the very important 10 to 12 films, and they have asked me to write an essay, monograph. But if you look into these films and the production houses, the major production houses of these 12 films, Rishabh Shetty films and Masari Takis, only one so-called, I can say, socialist, subaltern kind of, collective which is producing films in Karnataka, Masari film. That is true, they have done only one film so far. And Konanu films and Paramwa films. They have done their 300, 400, 500 crore rupees budget films. They are also doing some of the very interesting, very small, if you take the example of Mithya. Mithya is done by Paramwa Studios. So if you critically look into the films and film production houses, they are not having very much fundamental, formal kind of indie spirit. For example, when there was the release of very famous, very recent film Pedro by Natesh Hegde, there was a debate. He himself called his film as indie film. Okay, but the Natesh Hegde film Pedro is produced by one of the very moving, very famous popular director of Kannada known as Rishabh Shetty, and they have spent nearly 3 to 4 crore for the film. They still call it as indie cinema. So if you call some cinema, Kannada cinema, any kind of cinema across India, and it should be, consist, some spirit of Hindi cinema. That's very, very important. Like Kaushik Mukherjee, Gandu. The content, the making, and even the treatment, even the title itself, it's not so easy to hear and digest for Indian ethos and sociology, so-called sociology. We are still in, in a very much feudal, hyper patriarchal society, and house in a society and environment. It is very difficult to hear and understand the sensibility of a topic and even the content later. That is secondary. Okay, that comes second. But the first time, the hearing a topic known as Gandu itself is very much problematic in Indian context. Okay, somehow he never had any censor. He has done it for some international, film festivals and his own, joys or pleasure. So these are the very, very important thing. And are they really alternative? Are they really indie? So these are the very important questions. Are they really carry the political aesthetic spirit of indie? So these are the very important films, except the photo. The major production houses and their major production costs and their major popularity across India, across Karnataka, they are producing these kind of films. And another very important thing is, if you look into Rishabh Shetty and his idea of filmmaking, and his political, leaning, how he is and what is his political position. I don't want to make it in public. But if you look into the Pedro content and the Pedro aesthetics and politics, the Pedro is about human lynching. Somewhere in Sirsi, in a corner of Karnataka, the story revolves around lynching, cow lynching, especially the lynching was happening very much across India. The director was very much keen in having that subject, but the producer himself belongs to the other sphere of active politics and political position. So that's why it's very difficult to say and claim that there is a indie cinema, clear indie cinema in Kannada. So these are the very, very important and serious questions, and I stop here. And I think there is no concrete kind of or very much formal format kind of Kannada indie cinema in Kannada. But there are some efforts, some misnomer that journalists and some film critics also, they are naming and claiming, always experiments as either Neo films or indie films. This has become a habit. This has become a tradition as far as the Kannada cinema is concerned. So through this, I stop my discussion on this, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pradeep. May I request Ms. Glenmore to present the case.
While it comes, we don't have a lot of time, so I'll get to it very quickly. Just by show of hands, tell me, how many of you read news? Raise your hand if you say you read news. Okay, newspaper versus digital. How many newspaper readers here? Okay, those with digital subscriptions or people who read their news online? Okay. Now, those who access it via devices, how many of you go to Google? You just go to Google, click on News tab and say, okay, what's news for today? Google News, yes. How many through apps? How many of you have like a certain publishers app, like publications app? Not a lot. How many of you through social media and networking apps? You go to, every morning you open Twitter, that's, okay, right. Of this percentage, how many of you click through to the story, or you just stop at the caption and the thumbnail text? Depends. Do you click through to the story, or do you just watch, or you just read? Yeah, what? Click through? You do, okay. You do, okay. But the rest of you, I think, like the most of us, would just read the caption that's there, get like a snack-sized, depends on the story. Yeah, that's true. So, this, sorry, next. The next one. So this is sort of a cultural transformation, we can call it, in how that newsrooms are trying to grapple and sort of keep up with. So all of you, this diverse group here is the audience that newsrooms aim to target and reach every day, and we are trying to get to you as quickly as possible. Some people have mentioned speed also today when talking about news available digitally in the most effective format, while being as truthful, as authentic as possible, and all this perhaps with a little extra time than our print counterpart will have. And we also spoke about attention economy, right? So we all live with an attention economy, and all news publications are competing with themselves and the social media platforms for what little attention people have left today. And this transformation is also seen in what constitutes news, because some days, like you would know, a lot of news breaks on social media. News happens on social media, and what happens on social media ends up as news. We will get to that a little later. So this cultural transformation is, you can see it in how news is produced, viewed, distributed, and consumed. Can I have the... So, sorry, just a second. No, actually, why do I have this story, you think, here? Yes. Yes. Sorry? At the point we did this, yes, she was. But can I have the next slide? This is the data from all of last year, March 2020, April 2023 to March 20, April 2024 to March 2025. 1 year, top story on the Hindu. Would you believe it? Hindu is not known for its cinema coverage. It's not a cinema-related news publication, right? But this story, and I've redacted the numbers, sorry, I can't show you. But, millions of views, okay? And this was written by someone who just joined the organization on the digital desk. The movie was trending, her name was trending, we looked into why it was trending, and we realized it was this. Now, should you write a story? Should you not write a story? Is it important? And we thought, there's no harm in writing a story. You can add context. You can say, fine, she's changed her name, but here's also what she's doing. And we did that. So if you actually look at the story, there are, I think, 3 lines about this possible name change, and the rest is about her cinema. But millions of views, and we had no idea why it became so big. When you can see the other stories there, a lot of election-related coverage, live blog coverage, right? All of them didn't perform as well as that story did. Next slide. I wrote this. And again, 10 years ago when I was doing my master's, I never thought this is, I'm not putting down stories like this, because what this shows is what people are consuming today, right? Again, a trend story, like people would call it in digital newsrooms. But what we did is, while everybody else was, you may have seen stories that are written based off on tweets, right? One tweet, like say some history handle on Twitter will put a picture of old Bangalore. Someone will pick it up and say, this is how Bangalore was in 1858. This is how Kadri looked in the 1900s, or whatever, right? So this was one of those things. But to go beyond that, what we had done is way before Shivasri Skanda Prasad became associated with Tejaswi Surya's name, she was a singer, a dancer in her own right. And we had done an exclusive interview, two video interviews also. So I don't have the full story, I could take a screenshot of that, but if you go down, 2 paras about this wedding, who came, etc., and then we led them to our premium content. Right? So I think this is at the crux of understanding how digital newsrooms want to approach news today. Yes, we have no other way but to give you what you like. Not always. That is where the editorial judgment comes in. But once we give you that, we need to take you to content that we believe you will need to understand the world better. These are just like slightly trivial examples, but I'm saying we do it in a better way. And this is because I handle Karnataka, so I picked examples from Karnataka. So news today is no longer just a means to bring you everyday occurrences, events, happenings. You know, there's a strategic play of what kind of news to get across to the audience, the readers, the users, depending on what you're dealing with, and how best to do it so you serve them with authenticity and truth. And if this converts to subscriptions, great. And for news publications, their digital newsrooms are at the forefront of doing this. Next. And while we're doing this, we're also dealing with a push and pull between knowledge and information. Right? What essentially newspapers were looked at, or sometimes now people talk about the Hindu and he said, oh, my grandfather was reading for the editorials or the op-eds. So that was knowledge to people. Then it still is. But there are people who want bite-sized content, and there's a constant push and pull between how you're going to balance that. So like I said, we give you what you need, but we also take you to what we think you need to read. And to do that, we end up using multiple means to gauge the audience, to gauge how we can put across a particular story. And these are called, some of the things that we use are user needs, different formats of storytelling, SEO tools, audience metrics, and platform-specific news feeds. Any of you aware of user needs when writing a story for digital? Okay, then we can have the next slide. We'll have to come back to this. But, okay, so this is user needs, and it tells you the 8 ways a writer can approach a topic or a story when we are presenting news to you. And I will not get into this. This could be a classroom discussion with one of your professors someday. But it delves into the 4 basic needs that we have. That is to understand, to feel, to do, and to know. Right? So all of these functions, how will you do with news? And different stories lend themselves to different user needs at a time. The same story you can take and figure out how all of these needs can be fulfilled. And for each of these, you'll have a different set of audiences. Right? So with Update Me or Educate Me, you will have explainers. Explainers is a whole different set. Okay, let's take an example. The SLBC tunnel collapse in Telangana that happened. Telangana that happened. We had explainers, we had live blogs, we had an illustration of how long the tunnel was, where the collapses happened, how many people are stuck. So that's a visual representation. Then we had survival stories, we had rescue people, emergency personnel point of views. So all of this, and each of these will have an audience of its own. Then we can go to the next slide for a while. Yeah, so audience metrics also I'll talk to you. We have an analytics tool that we use. And this was in the month of March. These are the top stories for Hindu. Can you see? Is it clear? Okay. So you will see a lot of runner out happening, right? And Rania Rao is a classic story that will do very well online because cinema, crime, high-profile our premium content or the one that we put our heart and soul into. It was a regular routine update story, but millions of views. And then of course you can see a couple of more stories. I know, I mean, maybe you're not able to read it, but again, a few crime stories are also part of this. So crime tends to do really well. No, sir. So if we put something out as non-premium, we don't enter, because a news update is not, a follow-up story is not something I would give to you for premium. What we did have for, as far as Ranira was concerned, was we do something called Ground Zero, which is, it is also print page. You have like a full page of Sunday League. That was a premium story. I mean, it beats logic to me, because if you're reading it on print, why would I put it behind premium? But that's an organization. So people are buying the paper, so that makes sense for them. For the online readers, then behind it. Yes. 11 minutes, 12 minutes. Okay. I mean, this is after we have done it, but it does make sense in the sense that I can tell you for sure, like a Namma Metro story from Bangalore will always use it, because people use it every day. People want to know what's happening. Another class of stories that do well is if there's a bund. Then people want to know what time the bund is from, what time, what services are affected. I mean, and for newsrooms to produce that story, again, we are relying on tweet by the Bangalore Traffic Police or the Bangalore Commissioner. That's all we run. And you embed that tweet, stories do well. Because that's what people want. For the most part of their day, people want information that will make their life easier, especially if they're coming and clicking through to news publications online. So, but what these do is they help you gauge the popularity of a story. It will tell you where your readers are coming from, which section of readers from which part of the country or world are reading a specific story. It offers insight over which stories to promote on the main section. This, yes, not just a Hindu, a lot of publications now do it, because if you know a story is working well, you will try to promote it online on social media also. You will try to sort of give it more visibility on your site. That's how the analytics works. And you can also decide if a story demands more volume. Like if one story, like the SLBC story, you are not just reporting on, look, this collapse has happened, but you're seeing the many opportunities around that story, all well researched. I'm not saying because there were aspersions cast, and I don't disagree, but we are an integrated newsroom in the sense that some newsrooms still rely on print journalists to get them the stories, right? So I can't simply put a story. My bureau chief, who's a print bureau chief, will tell me this is approved, facts are checked, you do the need. So that happens. So yes, like that's one example of what you can do with a story. Then there is platform-specific news feeds. This is specific to social media. What sort of story do you promote where? On LinkedIn, startup stories do very well, right? On Twitter, they do very well. On Instagram, maybe not so much. And if you look at the Instagram page for the Hindu, ours is a very visual forward page. We have more photographs and videos versus just a photo with a headline and a thumbnail and says, this is the story. We don't promote normal stories, it focuses on photographs. So we also tend to showcase, we can showcase a lot of our photographers' works. Next. Okay, so if you've seen the last slide, these were some of the stories that were there, right? I wanted to take a look at the dates on them. There is June 17, 2023, July 28, 2023, September 13, 2024. The last slide I showed you was data from March 2025, and all three stories figure it. Now, when we saw this happen, for 2 days it didn't strike us. And then we realized this story is picking up. It is doing numbers by the thousands. Nobody knew why. I am frantically calling my Mangalore bureau chief saying, sir, what is happening? Is there, like, has someone applied for put a fresh petition, or has the case been opened up? But no, there was an injunction in the media. Media could not report on the story anymore. Karnataka High Court has clearly said reinvestigation. I think the father had a petition, and it said, even if you do, what's like, it can't be permitted. So after 2-3 days of really running around, we realized a YouTuber had put out 2 videos, Samir MD. Okay. So it was because of his videos that people started looking up this story, and 3 of these stories did really well. But we are helpless because we can't do anything around. Now, if a reader is interested, I would also be interested in trying to dig a little deeper, investigate, see what's happening, give you what's possible. There's an injunction, can't report on it. So this we had to let go. But this is one of the things I'm saying, where analytics can help. It will show you what stories you can really focus on, and put your resources there. Snippets will have to be written, trends will have to be looked at, but this is where you could focus. You can focus if you could. 2 minutes and I'm finished. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, on some days social media is where news breaks, or something that happens on social media becomes news, right? So this is the top-down and the bottom-up approach of how people, how news and social media are sort of interrelated. Can I have the links? Just 2 examples. Okay, the HD one first. Okay, so I'll just give you the brief on this. There was a tweet that went viral. Someone had said in that one particular story that said, if you travel 400 kilometers through Russia, you'll still be in Russia, right? And then one person had replied to this, you can see that in Bangalore also, Bangalore traffic also, right? Funny, right? People really took to it. This person was a Hindu journalist. And I had to tell my boss the next day in the meeting, like, listen, the story that's doing really well at this point in the Bangalore region, the subject of it is our report. So we can't report on it. But you see, this is like a classic Twitter to news publication kind of story, right? You can go down. Can you scroll down? So it's close to like 500, 600 word copy with tweets embedded, reactions embedded. This is what I think a lot of you will click on. So, okay, then I just wanted to, when I was talking about that one. This I wanted to show you a little earlier, but this was among, okay, if it doesn't, I will send you a link. This was a visual story we did on the Kallukurichi beach tragedy that happened. We had a story again, but all the way up. So it had beautiful illustrations, but it tells you the story in a format that we had not explored. We had done it for another story, but for a news story, this was the first, right? So all hand-drawn, illustrations, and it goes through like from top to bottom. You scroll and you can see the story. If you get a chance, please read this. It was very well done. Foreign publications have done it earlier, but this also won us an award. But regardless of that, it was a good attempt. And yes, it does. A lot of people worked on it in terms of product building, illustration, scripting. So yeah, that's the one. Last story that I will talk about. We're talking about social media and how it influences news. So this happened the other day. Someone knows of this? Yeah, right. So this is the updated story. But when it first came out, it happened on social media, Twitter mostly, and then it was everywhere. Everyone was, sharing it everywhere. So, no, this is the first story. There was another story. As in even then you can see updated there. So when we led with this, we said IAF officer assaulted in road rage incident. We didn't know he was a call center employee then. And what we did was, can you come now? you can see the scuffle happening there. That photo wasn't there yet. Down, all the way. I'll tell you when. Okay, well, yeah. This is the image we led with. Because all we knew at that point, for half a day after that story broke, was that this man had been injured and he claimed that it was a language route. Again, one thing we try and not to report because it creates more divide and especially an emotion where there isn't much truth, right? Language wars. We'll get to that when possible. So this is what we led with. And we said he was injured, he was beaten up, he's worried for his wife, etc. Half a day later, we realized that he had claimed he hadn't hit that person, but he had. And I had to tell my editor, I have embedded a video, if you want, you remove it, because it's not showing you the whole truth, it's only this side of the truth. And she said, you know what, we have the image, video of the fight that is happening. Let's stitch it together and see if people, because if I don't give it to you, someone will give it to you. You don't have to come to the Hindu to watch that fight breaking out, right? So we decided, okay, generally otherwise we don't show blood, gore, fights, all of that. So come down. So in the story that finally went with the updated this thing, also that, I mean, we don't have to show this, but this was the stitched video. So it was an application. I mean, we had to do it because we had taken a hasty decision. Not a hasty, but with what we had. We ran with what we had without realizing that there could be another side to this, or waited until the other side came. And so then, the rest of the story followed. We had a follow-up, the guy filed a counter-complaint, all of this. No, nothing like that. But I think we owed it to. Yes. And for at 11:30 in the night, national news media were not ready to accept that he could have. IAS officer hai kaise yaar? No. So there was some bias into that news. Yeah, I mean, you didn't have. I mean, not they weren't saying it, but the tone was that we believe he may have assaulted. Then this was also an alleged assault, like both the sides. Yeah. So. They all updated the story, but I'm saying when the first hint that it's not just this guy who's beaten him up, that there's an altercation that's happened from both sides. It took a while to sink in because you're also questioning what we hold very dear, which is the armed forces, which is okay. Okay. Right. So I will stop here. There was something else, but it's not really important. So like you've seen so far, audience desires are at the forefront somewhere of news making in digital newsrooms, but you have to see how you give it to them and what you can give them more than what they believe they need, right? So do not get into, we try and not to get into this survival instinct mode where we like numbers, and do some good work. And yeah, I think I'll end with that. We'll see if there's a discussion later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dharma. So the modern idea of public interest stories is what public really wants rather than what is in their interest. So we'll open the panel for question and answer. We'll ask the audience, you may first ask questions to Dr. Lal. He has to leave, he has a train to catch. So if there are any questions, please ask. You can ask the other panelists also, but preferably first to Dr. Lal. Yes.
Dr. Lal, this is with reference to your mentioning that Uniyarcha movie. Why was it not a biopic? It's fictional actually. And in such cases, you don't have a sequence. It's a matter of cinematic expression. It is not absolute. Whereas a biopic like Dhoni biopic, it is well defined. So is it something, does the explanation go something like that? You had the answer, I'm sure. You were just raising that question.
Yeah, thank you for that question. See, Unni Arja or movies, there is an issue that once we define the idea of biopics, we normally say that this is the factual history of a particular person, right? Normally we do that, right? But on the other side, once we choose the hero or the heroine who is actually playing the role of this person, who is also a social reality, right? Like as in the case of Sanjay Dutt, right? We were actually seeing the Ranbir, who is playing the role of Sanjay in the film Sanjay, right? But what all things we were actually looking at him was the height, right? The look, that whether it is okay with Ranbir to Sanju, right? So these are the concerns which are beyond the imagination of cinema, right? Right. So this is not really the cinematic imagination, right? So this is the social imagination about Sanjay, right? Because we have an original Sanjay Dutt here, right? So what we are doing is we are making a sense by just taking this hero Ranbir to the role of Sanjay, right? So this is beyond the imagination of cinema. That is what my argument is, right? And in the case of Unni also, right? What you have just suggested, this is not really a kind of a written history, right? This is not a written history. This is with the ballads that we used to believe that there was a social history like this, right? And the written verses or the literature which is actually accompanied in the cinema as well actually follows the same kind of a tradition as that of the ballad, right? Right. So this is not purely, in some sense, can be called as biopic, as you said, but there are elements within this cinema which are purely cinematic imagination looking at the social history. Right. This is my answer to that question. And are there any more questions?
I don't know how it is apt with what you have discussed, but you talked about the social aspect of the of the audience. On one side there is this social aspect, and on the other side there is aesthetic perspective, right? So from the tradition we see that aesthetics is all about involving in the performance and forgetting about what is happening around us. So, do you think the social aspect is influencing such kind of experience?
Yeah, definitely. That is the argumentative point that I am having. And recently, as our session is progressing, there is a new news that is coming up. There is a film that is going to get released in May 9th. The title of the film is Abdullah, right? Just after this Pahalgam incident, the hero of the film is a Pakistani actor. So there is a kind of a discussion that is going on whether the cinema has to be banned or not, right? So this is, in a way, is an answer to what you said, right? So this is not really the cinematic imagination that is entirely ruling the scenario of the content of the cinema, right? This is my argument. And in the case of the recently released cinema in Malayalam, which is Empura, I have, I think in the folder there is the poster of this cinema as well. And another peculiar incident that I just forgotten to say is about the autobiography written by the soft porn film actress Shakila, right? Right. Shakila has her autobiography in which she says that her own sister, elder sister, once she went to the marriage of her daughter, was asking her, why you are here in this marriage? Because you are supposed to be a kind of a person who is not expected to be here in this holy or in this kind of a ceremony here, right? So this is cinema that is actually happening somewhere else, but this person is in a kind of a ban or in a kind of a control of the social system around, right? And to the presentation of Dr. Pradeep, I just like to add a few more points that In the case of the New Wave cinema, the centrality of the cinema was a little bit confusing in some sense, right? So it actually tried to portray the emotions or sentiments or the issues of an individual, right? As we see in the case of Bicycle Thieves, right? And in the case of Newspaper Boy, it's a story which is not like a story which is spread all over the content. It has a centrality. It has a theme which is central to it, right? As we discussed in the case of Newspaper Boy. I'm not quite sure what happened here in Kannada. You said that you haven't actually witnessed any cinema of this kind. I'm not quite sure about it, but anyway. And to the second aspect about the idea of Bollywood, there is good work by Ashish Rajadiksha, who is also the editor of the Encyclopedia of Films with Paul Willman. This Ashish has actually named a new kind of a jargon like Bollywoodization, right? Bollywoodization. So if you could get a chance, you can actually try to read. And there is Ashish again actually mentioning an interesting conversation that happened between G. Aravindan and the recently passed away veteran director Kumar Sharani. Right. There is an interesting kind of a conversation, and during the conversation for this 2 hours time, both of them were silent for more than 1 hour, right? So he is actually making a kind of a speculation about what would have been the content of the discussion between them, right? And there is another point in which you said, I think the Kannadi in the cinema, right? You were actually mentioning about it. Yeah. So the discussion is going on with this new idea, like what is a national cinema? How would you design or how would you decide what is a national cinema? If the cinema is actually produced in the language of Hindi, would you call it as national cinema? If the cinema is released in your regional language, aren't they national cinemas? So the very idea of regional cinema and national cinema obviously have this kind of a debate, a kind of a rift that is actually going on. Abhi bhi jari hai wo. The discussion is still going on, right? So are there any questions? I'm ready to, I'm eagerly waiting for your questions. Most of the works that I have done is like this, the social entities on one side, and again I'm doing the field work now, right?
So Dr. Lal, so with the advent of OTT platforms, is it now, are we still calling a Malayalam cinema regional cinema? Because it is reaching more audience than before. So is that line blurring now at least?
Okay, see, in the case of Malayalam cinema like Impura, so there is a kind of a mix-up of actors or the amount which is actually spent as an investment to produce a cinema is actually totally changed, right? So even in the case when this Bahubali was released, the amount of money which was actually spent on the cinema was huge, and it was simultaneously dubbed into Hindi, Telugu, Tamil. But the issue comes, like in the case of Kandara, I have worked on it, right? In the case of the film Kandara, of which you are quite familiar with, so the villain of the cinema is a Malayali who is coming from Kerala to Kannada, right? This region of Kannada, right? But once it is getting translated into Malayalam, right? Both of them are actually speaking the language Malayalam. Then the risk of the cinema is how would you make aware of the audience that this person is from Kerala, right? So something else has to be introduced, right? So this kind of an introduction of the demography to which this hero or this villain belongs to comes into play, right? Which is not the plot of the cinema or the cinematic imagination, which is purely social, right? So this kind of an intervention from the part or from the side of social, or I would say largely the social history, plays a vital role. So we have to introduce a new kind of a plot so that the audience would say that he is a villain, he is coming from this region, right? So this is this is an interesting point. So hopefully, if all the questions are answered, then
Are there any questions to Dr. Lal? Okay. So Dr. Lal has to leave. So
I have actually circulated the synopsis of what I've said. So if you have any queries, you can just write down all the queries on the other side of the paper and just hand over to your faculty members. I will get it. And I'm free and I'm readily available to answer such academic questions, only academic questions.
So on behalf of the entire NICO and the organizers, we thank you so much for presenting your case and answering all the questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Lal. We'll take maybe a few more questions to the other panelists as well. Any questions? So I wanted to ask Nalme that stories regarding Dharmasthala was trending and stories which you had published in 23 and 24 were, getting a lot of hits. So you now there is a court order that you can't publish. But is it possible for you to republish the old story in 2025? Is that possible?
Republish.
I mean, when you say 2023, it's down in the archive, right? So it's not on the front page of the story. Can you republish it?
Republish in print.
No, on the web.
I can bring it back up top. Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So
I
is
can,
that
I can give
possible?
it more visibility, but the link is there. So you can't republish a story that way, but you can.
Of course, when I search on Google, I might get it.
You will.
Yeah. But because of the hits also.
Yes. So.
So there is no issue with courts or any law as such to bring it onto the front page of the, your home page or something like that.
See, homepage would not be preferred because there is newer stories happening that they would want to highlight. But we have a section called news, where if a story is, trending, it's doing well, and more people are coming to the site to read it, we will push it. What we did was we just replugged it. On Twitter, you can replug that story and say, and that was done in the context of reporting over this YouTuber's video. So we did write about the YouTuber and not making a video, but an FIR being filed against him. Now you can't write about the video. If you write about the video, you have to mention what the content is. But you can say that the FIR mentions this. So Hindu doesn't report on crime or crimes that come to light through social media or WhatsApp or whatever, without there being an FIR. Like you have to have some basis or some police, court.
Also that the Alia Bhatt story that you were mentioning, where she changed her name, which did phenomenally well. Where was the traffic from? Is it from the social media? Is it from Twitter or WhatsApp? Do you get some kind of data?
Google and Twitter. So it's not just us, a lot of news organizations now actively look for trends, right? So they have teams that track trends and you decide which ones to pick, which ones not to pick or avoid, or how else you can write about it. Yes, Google Trends and Twitter tend to.
But is that, I spoke to one marketing person who told me, I don't want to quote the figure. He said, you pay me this amount, I can make your news trending top one in Twitter, is what he promised me.
I don't know.
So then the whole context changes, right? If it is, Twitter is also accepting money for pushing some information. They are also commercial media. So what is this whole idea of trend in that case?
I did not know that. But what is the whole idea of trend if trends can be bought and sold? Yeah, I mean, I don't have, I have an answer to that in the sense that, because like, this is news to me, right? So, but how does a story, oh, you mean like a published story that's trending? No, but we're not writing on the basis of that. We are writing on the basis of tweets. So you see a topic that's gaining traction, not even tweets sometimes, just a topic that's gaining traction, and you realize there could be something to this. And that's how we approach it. Yeah, the other answer I don't think I'd be able to give you.
So you've been a curator for many of the film festivals. You work with IFI, BIFES, also Mumbai International Film Festival, etc. So how does the curation happen, especially in this era where a lot of films are being censored and films are not being released in India? So in the case of, there's a film called Santosh which is not being certified. So how does the festival look at these aspects, and how do you curate, keeping in mind all these aspects?
If you look into the festivals circuit and arena in India, I think we have very few festivals they are curating meticulously and consciously. I have heard from my friend, she was curating for Kerala festivals. Kerala FFK also, affecting a lot from the system, from the party line, and many, even ideology. I think we have two kind of festivals. One is festivals run by state, and second one is festival run by spirit, like festival known as Dharmashala, DAFF, and even Mami, without Geo, only Mami. This year they have run a festival without Geo. That is due to a very interesting political crisis. Fight happened last year. This due to the Geo Foundation pushed a film that is slight pro BJP, but the curation team and artistic team was little leaning to left and liberal kind of thing, and they broke. And this year they had a festival without Geo. Even Dharmashala also, for that matter, it's a great festival with festival spirit. All the festivals, including Kerala festivals, there lies politics, there lies ideology. Among the major festivals, I can, name IFFK. Kerala is a very important and interesting festival, but I think 3 years ago, Kerala brought a very iconic filmmaker known as Belatar from Hungary. He born and he has seen post-Stalinist Hungary and Exodus, which is done by Stalin. And he was very much critical of Stalin and communist system of Europe, especially Hungary. And he openly made a comment in IFFK after receiving Lifetime Achievement Award. For that reason, that year, the artistic director has been fired. So this is a liberty, the social, that is true in a state in which, people claim that, a state of socialism, state of liberal, discursive possibility. And if you look into other festivals like Bengaluru, like Goa, you know very well that, and everybody know that what kind of films are curated. It's much of ideology backed, kind of propaganda backed, without serious films, without serious aesthetics. So these are the things. And curation of festival, any kind of festival. There is a small festival in Bhubaneswar run by ex-techie. He was in Bangalore, he went to Bhubaneswar and is doing festival there. It's an amazing festival. And there is another festival in Chennai by, social activist known as Amudan. Okay. So these are the festivals by spirit actually. They carry the real vigor and sense of festivals. And large festivals including Bengaluru and including Goa and large state-sponsored festivals, they state government and central government, you know, the IFI nearly they have budget of 30 to 35 crore. This hire lot of people, including, you know, they know exactly the computer skills. They can copy the Cannes competition films, Berlin competition films, and Venice competition films. They copy and make a very huge list, and they get the films. It's not a great thing, but if you compare, if you look into some sensible festivals, including Kerala, you know, it matters. There is difference between curation and programming.
Yeah, yes. I have a question for Ms. Nanda. My question is, except for the New Indian Express, to my knowledge, rest of the newspapers, those who run web portals, the content is not for free. Even if you want to, go through some of the content, subscription is there. I believe the market is tough, it's also stiff, and we have many challenges. So in this competitive world, in this, market beat and meet, what kind of, decisions you take when you say you will not give content for free? So are you confident enough that people will come behind you, they'll follow you, they'll subscribe you?
Not at all.
So what is your
No,
strategy?
so see, this is an organization level decision. So, but what I know is that the one way that we try to draw more subscribers is by giving content that you need to pay for. And this is across the board, like a lot of news portals or publications now want to increasingly move towards, like the independent publications are now calling for pay subscription
Like
for
the news
independent.
story and the news bulletin.
Yes, yes. So again, we can't compete with them because our what we offer is a very wide variety. It's not always in-depth or long-form content. But
Are you depending on that revenue or the traditional revenue, what that comes from advertisers? Both you're doing.
both. Because I don't think as yet we've been able to crack even for digital. Not possible. I think even in the near future it'll be very difficult. So because there are quite a few products. We have the digital product. We have the e-paper.
Yeah, exactly. And what's the comparison? How do you compare the digital price for advertisements and print price for advertisement? Which one is expensive?
I think now digital. If you see the package, I think there's an all-access pass which goes for I think 2,400 a year, if I'm not wrong. Like the annual, which is
Advertising cost.
I'm talking about advertisements. The print, which one is more expensive for the customer to give an advertisement for the print or for the digital?
that I wouldn't know. Sir.
I think the print is still expensive. Print is very expensive.
Yeah,
Digital is always inexpensive.
Also because
Yeah, much lower. Yeah.
Sir would be able to tell you.
1/10 of
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nanda.
And to answer your question, Dr. Nesira, so most of the newspapers in India, as Nanda says, she is not sure whether they will earn revenue or not. They are just following the Washington Post or international media who have done this already. What they have, see now someone like Washington Post, they are retailing news. So if you want just sports, you can have sports subscription from Washington Post. It will cost hardly say $2 per month.
Yes, Nanda. As Professor Raviraj rightly pointed out the example of Washington Post, when it comes to web portals and when it comes to e-papers, the Washington Post e-paper is interactive. The papers will get updated. But here in India, most of the e-papers don't get updated. They only once in a day, you have to change it.
They'll upload the PDF.
They'll upload the PDF, they're not interactive.
Yeah. No, they're not.
So why is that delay? Why it's not happening here?
No, interactive medium is very expensive.
Yeah.
Only see you read Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera has the interactive section. You need Python programming for it. You need animators for it. You need VFX for it. And these are really expensive artists. Like one story that she
Does
showed.
it mean that Hindu cannot afford it to do that?
That's,
I'm not.
that's not the question. The thing is, to produce one story is going to cost so much. They are not, I know, they can afford it, but I don't think so they are not ready yet. Because they have never spent so much money on procuring one story so far. Because it was always easy. Send a reporter, get some photographs. Now at least maybe a 1 minute video that is still not costing them so much. But suddenly when you need programming for it, when you need animators for it, you need other things, technology for it, and technology is expensive, and we've never paid so much for that.
And news tech building is not there yet in India as you would see elsewhere. Like product guys, product guys are very important to us, but even our product guys have so much to learn. I just went on this media tour of sorts, and you wouldn't believe the kind of things a news portal which manages several other smaller portals in Bangalore is doing. There is a company that takes webtoons from Korea and it's trying to animate it here. They're doing it via AI. They have this brilliant, I think it's an open source AI tool that you can use. But just the product, the tech that goes, to get to that point is expensive and needs a lot of really experienced resources, like people. And I don't think we're there yet. That will take some time.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, we'll
Students.
We'll wind it up. We're already running short of time. So now.
I thank each of our panelists, Dr. Lal Mohan, Dr. Pradeep Kenchanuru, and Ms. Nalma Nachiyar, and our moderator, Mr. Dagraj Kini, on behalf of NITO Institute of Communication, for being here, and to all of you for joining us. Thank you. I now request Mr. Dagraj Kini to hand over the mementos to our panelists. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you.
Hello. I request all the paper presenters to go to second floor conference room. The paper presenters who are in the second today's panel session, second day. And those who are for this particular session, please stay back in the auditorium. Please stay back in the auditorium, those who are for the panel session 1 for technical session, and those who are for technical session 2, that is parallel session, having simultaneously at the today. So please go to second floor conference room. Thank you.
everyone. Welcome to the first technical session. The rules for the session are as follows. The presenters will get 5 plus 2 minutes. Please only present the name of the topic, the introduction, objective, method, findings and conclusion. Please do not get descriptive and do not include the review of literature. We have with us Dr. Arjun Mitra, Assistant Professor at NICO Institute of Communication, as a moderator for today's session. Dr. Mitra is a distinguished media and communication specialist, bringing over 12 years of rich experience spanning academia, industry, and research. His expertise lies in journalism, mass communication, and environmental sustainability, with notable contributions to curriculum development and interdisciplinary research. He has been a key contributor to the initiatives such as Green MBA, program at IIM Kashipur in collaboration with the World Bank, and various digital education projects that reflect his commitment to innovative pedagogy and sustainable development. Dr. Mitra is a prolific scholar with 100 plus publications across diverse fields. He ranks among the top 10% researchers globally in media and communication on ResearchGate and is recognized as a leading researcher in AI and journalism by Google Scholar. His scholarly output includes 38 plus Scopus indexed articles and 10 plus authored books, covering critical and emerging areas like artificial intelligence in media, new media and digital transformation, science communication, and environmental communication. Beyond academia, Dr. Mitra is a dedicated social worker and the co-founder of Wild Reaction, a wildlife research and conservation organization working to protect gangetic dolphins in India, quartered in West Bengal. With his blend of academic excellence, research depth, and real-world impact, Dr. Mitra brings immense value and perspective to today's discussion. With this, we begin with the first presenter. The first presenter will be Mohammed Fawaz. He will be presenting on the neurological impact of digital media on criminal mindsets. Fawaz, please note at 5 minutes there will be a bell and then you get 2 minutes after that. Your time starts now.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Mohammed Fawaz Siyam, currently working as a forensic psychologist and project associate at University Science College, Coimbatore. So, today here I'm presenting on the topic, the neurological impact of digital media on criminal mindset. As we know, in the present era, the importance of digital media is very important in our present scenario, right? So most of us, including the smallest child to the oldest person, will always interacting in the or influencing their times in the digital era. So especially in the movies, reels, video games, these things will influence a person's life very effectively. There are good content movies or good content social things, as well as the negative or violent content movies also there. So most of the cases, the pupil will choose the violent content things rather than the good or informative contents. And it will lead to criminal behavior also. So the digital media, including video games, films, and social media, plays a significant role in shaping brain activity and behavior. When a person usually trying to interact or trying to consume the digital media, violent contents, definitely some changes will happen in his brain regions like prefrontal cortex and amygdala. Prefrontal cortex, there the impulsive control will take place, and in amygdala, the lack of empathy will take place. So, the excessive consumption of violent contents or violent content related things, it will lead a person into criminal mindset gradually. So, could you please see? So nowadays, the social media platforms often enhance impulsivity and reward aggressive behavior through constant feedback mechanisms. And the desensitization of to violent and emotional stimuli further reinforces antisocial behavior and contribute to the development of criminal thinking patterns such as cyberbullying and violence normalization. Next slide. So my aim is to explore the neurological impact of digital media on criminal thought processes and behavior, and the objectives examine the neurological changes from prolonged exposure to violent media, then to analyze how media impacts empathy, aggression, and moral reasoning, at last to investigate the link between media consumption and criminal behavior. So here I took a theoretical framework, and it's a narrative review paper, and it shows that most of the papers show some results from the neuroimaging techniques like fMRI, PT, and the EEG. It shows that reduced activity in orbitofrontal cortex and the changes in anterior cingulate cortex and the prefrontal cortex impairing the emotional control, and it will lead to impulsive aggression and lack of empathy as well as. Then social learning theory, as we know, social learning theory done by Dr. Albert Bandura. When a person is trying to imitate or copying something is through the learning or observations or experiencing something. So when a person is experiencing or always watching the violent kind of things, definitely gradually he will leads to criminal mindsets. And in conclusion, digital media alters aggression via brain, cognition, and emotions. The excessive use of violent contents in digital media, it will lead to some alterations or some structural abnormalities in the brain and cognition and emotions, and it will lead to criminality. And the violent content impact impulses control and empathy negation. Desensitization and algorithm reward reinforce aggression. Effects vary by individual and environment. And the media reward system like likes, share, and comment things, it will also improve a person's or it will motivate a person to enhance more contents or interacting in social medias at any time. So it will also lead to become as a factor that leads to a criminality. And there are the limitations. It's a theoretical analysis and it lacks primary experimental and real data. So there is not that much contents or studies in this area. It's also a limitation. And it's a theoretical framework, and it is planned to conduct a experimental study by using fMRI, EEG, things like that.
Thank you, Fawaz. It was an interesting study. I know the background of the study, so it was much more easier for me to understand. fMRI and EEGs are very good tools to really neuroimagine the studies that you are trying to conduct. And thank you for such an innovative and new area of research that you are indulging in. And I hope and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next presenter is Vishal Nayak. He'll be presenting on Perceiving Gendered Appeals, a youth-centric audience study of representation in toothpaste advertising.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I am presenting a paper on perceiving gendered appeals, a youth-centric audience study of representation in toothpaste advertising. The study was done by myself and my student Ashika Matthew helped me collect the data for it. The primary objective mainly is to examine how emotional appeals and logical appeals are factors in advertising. Also, we wanted to see how the youth are perceptive about gender and gender stereotyping in toothpaste advertising. We took toothpaste industry as one of our models. Theoretical framework was is a framework by Petty and Cassiopeia, that is elaboration likelihood model, which says that there are two routes to persuasion. It's a general theory of persuasion. There are two routes of persuasion. One is the central route, which is highly message-centric, where the other one is the peripheral route, which is based on the emotional cues, which is more context-centric application. We have to classify the youth processing tendencies and gender-based ad responses. I'm going to skip the literature review and I'm going to directly go to the methodology. It was a quantitative survey. We surveyed 334 students in Bangalore, out of which 300 were found to be valid, and somewhere around 305. We took 300 as a round figure. The instrument was a 15-item survey, and the focus was on emotional and rational appeals in toothpaste advertising. We found the reliability was pretty good. The sampling was 334 in Mango. 334 actually filled up, 300 we took. Non-probability sampling, it was more of a convenience and purposive sampling. There were 157 females and 143 males, kind of equal number. The data analysis too, we ran a novelty test on the data. We found that it was not normally distributed, so we had to go for parametric tests, and we used, since it was two variables, we had man-Whitney, mu test, the non-parametric equivalent of the t-test. The key results, quickly we'll look at it. Female respondents watched more toothpaste ads. Males were, but we saw that males were more influenced by the ad content. Now, literature review actually said the opposite. But in this study, we found that the female respondents, we can't say females, we can't generalize it right now, because female respondents watched toothpaste ads more, but males were more influenced, and males showed stronger agreement across all appeal types, emotional as well as rational. The feature-based was the p-value was quite significant, humor p-value was quite significant, and emotional family marginal but not very significant. So in terms of gender and perception insights, males agreed more on ads inevitability in purchase decisions. We had a p-value of 0.024, ads being gender targeted 0.022, which is quite significant, and perception of differentiated impact by gender. They were very, very conscious about gender stereotypes in toothpaste ads. We took toothpaste ads. So the discussion is that the findings were not what I was expecting, because the literature review said something and the findings said something else. Males were more responsive to both rational and emotional appeal. High product involvement in males may lead to dual route processing. Males might take the central route as well as the peripheral route. Females possibly were more skeptical or detached, the female respondents, and this reflects changing gender dynamics in our opinion, that is, reflects changing gender dynamics in ad reception. The conclusion says that ELM, the elaboration likelihood model, is valid for analyzing gendered response to advertising. Males process ads via both routes, central and peripheral, more than females, and highlights needs for nuanced advertising beyond stereotypes. The limitations and recommendations are that the sample was based only in Mangalore. If we do the same test outside ED, we might not get the same results. Self-reported data may not capture subconscious processing, and future directions, what we suggest is maybe we can include broader demographics and also explore longitudinal studies and also explore neuromarketing tools for deeper insight. With that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for your patience with me.
Thank you, Vishal sir. It was a very innovative and very small and crisp presentation. Thank you for that. And I have only one small question. That is, what is the rationale behind taking 15-point scale for measurement? Like 15.
We saw that in the previous literature review, some of this thing, and we had taken Likert scale, and only the few demographic related questions were optional, but the other questions were Likert scale, strongly agree to strongly disagree, 5 point. So the other previous studies which we saw, and some thesis also we saw, they were having a 15-point or a 17-point question, and it was a small study, so we thought we'd go for a smaller rationale.
Okay.
That is also probably a limitation we can add into that.
Yeah. Thank you for that, sir, and all the best. With
Thank
your
you, sir.
research.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
The next presenter is Ashwati. She'll be presenting on media violence and its influence on aggressive fantasy development in children.
Hi, good evening all. I'm Ashwati and I'm a psychologist and a research assistant in Nehru Arts and Science College, Coimbatore. So my topic is media violence and its influence on aggressive fantasy development in children. So I want to start with a question for you all that at which age you got your own electronic gadget? It can be a phone or a laptop or anything. At which age you got that? 18. Okay. Okay, probably it is from like 15 to like 18. That will be the age group. But nowadays, like look at now the children, like they are born into social media or they are born into digital world. So it is very important to discuss about what is the effect that can cause in digital media. That can cause in children using the digital media. So media saturation in childhood, like they are attaining saturation at very young age. So they have access to everything, and it is very much glamorized that if a child is able to access every YouTube channel or TV shows at a very young age. So it is very problematic that, like for example, superhero films are there, violent games are there. So it can cause aggressive fantasies among children. So what is aggressive fantasy? Like it is like a rehearsal of behavior. Like aggressive fantasy is different from just an imaginative play. It is like goal directed and violent. So they will be rehearsed, like there will be a mental rehearsal throughout the time when if the child is watching violent movies or not. Like the screen time is very high so that they can be like going into violent fantasies, like they will be having aggressive fantasies. So my research objectives were explore the neuropsychological mechanism linking media violence and aggressive fantasy, and then evaluate the theoretical frameworks explaining this phenomenon and suggest the preventive strategies. So I'm skipping the back.
background part, but the theoretical framework, like as we know, social learning theory, which is by Albert Bandura, which is that while we are observing something, we have the tendency to imitate that behavior. So if the child is exposed to violent crime, like violent movies or TV shows frequently, the behavior can be imitated. Then the script theory, it is like we are forming a mental script in the mind, and the expected behavior in same real life scenarios. They are expecting the real life scenarios, like violent crime, violent content they are seeing, then they will be internalizing the script, then the conflict situation and aggressive reaction. Then the desensitization hypothesis, it is like they will be having reduced emotional reactivity while exposed to the violent contents. So my analysis main themes, like it was a narrative study, and my main themes were like cognitive scripts and emotional numbing. So, and in neuropsychological perspective, like hyperactive of amygdala, which can cause. Okay, here you can see hyperactive of amygdala, which can cause low empathy and low emotional regulations. Then reduced prefrontal regulation, which can lead into impulsive behavior. They will be having continuous aggressive thoughts. Like they will be aggressive throughout the times, and it will be very impulsive. They can do the crime, like they have the tendency to attack someone, or they have the tendency to be aggressive. Then mirror neurons, like mirror neurons is same as like observation theory, where we will be observing something and we will be mirroring that behavior. Then cognitive and emotional development, which is aggressive cognitive script. They will create a script in their mind, so they will be very much ready to do some crime, or they will be very much ready to react when a crime happens, or when something happens against them. They will be very reactive. Then the moral reasoning. So I don't know how many of you know Sigmund Freud's ego superego. In that, there is like we have a morality, that is moral reasoning, and reduced empathy. Then the results main are like aggressive fantasies reinforced by violent media. Then there is a consistent evidence that impairment in empathy is there, and emotional regulation is also there. Then making some media literacy and active parental engagement can be effective for like decreasing this behavior in the children. So the conclusion is same, media violence is significantly shapes internal fantasy and behavioral patterns. And the limitation, I have very low data related to this studies, like there are studies but not directly related to this. And then like for future works we can do experimental studies related to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Shruti, for this presentation. Yes, it is not a new research in the West, but in India it is picking up pace. And another aspect is the research has been always been done from the psychological perspective, neuroscience perspective, but not from the media perspective. So yes, it is coming to an era where we as media professionals, as communication professionals, are also looking into this field. And today morning only we published the book, and there is a chapter on animated content and how it is affecting our neurological brain. So definitely this is a very, very interesting area of the study, and I would request you to go for that longitudinal study which you have given as a limitation. And when I see you next time, I'm definitely looking for something very quantitative from you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
The next presenter is Sanjana. She'll be presenting on media education and training in digital marketing using AI and Power BI.
Good evening to one and all. Myself Sanjana from Dr. NSM First Grade College, Elanka, Bangalore. And this is a joint paper with my professor. And my title is Media Education and Training in Digital Marketing using AI and Power BI. So I'll start with the introduction. So the use of AI and BI, that is artificial intelligence and business intelligence, in learning and development is reshaping the digital marketing education. So which influences for the future outcomes of all the youngsters and the youth. AI and Power BI help eliminate shortcomings of traditional education, promoting faster skill developments for the futures. So the educators and learners for active learning and strategy, optimization, enhancing professional growth in competitive markets. The review of literature says that, according to Simon Kingston, is the success highlights how AI enables personalized marketing strategies and predictive analysis, the large data sets with Power BI, which is ruining the world and shaping the future of all the youths. So both sources, that is the AI and the Power BI, underline the need for education system to integrate AI to prepare students for evolving the demands for the digital economy for the future. So here, the aim and objectives are the perspectives of the future. So the aim of this research is the primary goal of this research paper is to explore that the artificial intelligence and the business intelligence that plays a role in the media education training, provision for digital marketing, and in learning and professional development. So the objectives of this research paper includes to evaluate AI and BI, which influences on the efficiency and effectiveness of digital marketing strategies. It assesses how AI can shape the learning outcomes of students in digital marketing courses. It also investigates for those who challenges for media, education and training in the area of AI and BI in digital marketing. So the methodology, scope and limitations. So the methodology here I have used like the descriptive and analytical method. The descriptive method which summarizes the current positions, and whereas analytical method interpret impacts, challenges and opportunities. The scope of this study focuses mainly on AI and BI's role in shaping teaching practices, learning outcomes and professionalism in digital marketing education. So the next is like the discussion. This is a main part of my research paper. So over here, AI and BI, integration in media education and digital marketing training, which enhances professional development to adopt the technological advancements for the future benefit of every youth. AI and BI improves the efficiency, personalized and equipped learners with essential for the digital economy. This framework is crucial in education, which helps students to understand the strategical to apply AI aligned with organizational goals. Next, like AI and BI, these are the main tools which is ruining the world today in the education system along with the digital marketing. It is also personalizing the learning with ready information to support decision making and creativity. So the students are encouraged to apply AI strategically in real-world marketing context. Following AI and BI integration in media education helps students to develop professional employable skills in digital marketing. Here I can highlight that the ethical challenges surrounding AI and the need for educators to adapt to the technological changes. This work emphasizes the importance of preparing students with both technical skills to engage with AI and understand the ethical implications. So here the research findings of this paper are: the integration of AI into media education provides students with learning experiences that are personalized for the students' needs, which leads to the better outcomes in the future. The main challenge of implementing AI and BI in this present generation, which includes technological infrastructure, faculty training, and particularly in under-resourced access. So your business intelligence, which is also the tool of power business intelligence, it allows students to analyze real-time data and create optimization marketing strategies. So here I can conclude that the AI and BI integration optimizes marketing strategies to meet the demands of the digital economy and a hyper-connected audience. Challenges such as limited infrastructure and access to technology, the under-resourced areas remain significant obstacles for many educational institutions. Despite these challenges, the research shows that AI and BI can drive the innovation through data-driven decisions, improving marketing outcomes. The books and articles used for this research paper were the Bible or there. Thank you.
Very good work, Sanjana. And I would ask you a question. That is this your first presentation or you've given presentation before?
It's first presentation.
Yeah, first of all, I congratulate you on your first presentation. Coming up there and presenting is a huge thing, and always you'll remember your first one. I do remember my first presentation as well. So, not going into the nitty-gritties of research, you're too young and you will learn as you go along. I have just asked you one question, that what BI can do that AI cannot?
So like BI has more features than power AI. So it can like even though for the younger ones and they can be applicable more.
Give an example.
Like in the education itself.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sanjana. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next presenter is Tapasvi. They'll be presenting on the role of social media in shaping body image perception among adolescents and adults in Mangalore.
Respected moderator and my dear friends, I have conducted a study on the role of social media in shaping body image perceptions among adolescents and adults in Mangalore. It is a joint study with my teacher, Father William Marcel. So what is body image? It's a complex psychological phenomenon. It's not static, it keeps on changing, right? So it evolves around perceptions, our thoughts, our experiences and societal standards. So it has a strong link between body image and our self-esteem. When we are positive about our body image, we are very confident to portray ourselves. But when we are negative, we are very, shameful, like how we can perceive in front of the public. So, what is the role of media in shaping body image? So, post commercialization, there was a pervasive medium, like it was the influence on the beauty standards. Like media often reflected whatever the elite interests were on the public. And what is the social media's impact on the youth? So over 700 million users in India, like youth are the heavy consumers of social media, and there is a polarization of the content as well. Like it fosters echo chambers and it gives the information what we want to consume. And theoretical framework, I have used cultivation theory in social media aspect. The age group was adolescents and emerging adults. Adolescents, I took late adolescents, and this is the age group where we develop our, physical, psychological, and social changes. And in emerging adults, what happens is we are fully developed, but it's kind of an exploration phase. So it appears to have many changes in our psychological as well as physical well-being. And why I chose Mangalore, because it has lot of culture, traditions, values, and there is a rapid growth of urban development in Mangalore. That is why I chose Mangalore. Research gap. So research gap is, there is a lack of research in Mangalore, specifically on social media and body image, and age specifications is required, and adolescents and emerging adults is the age where we consume a lot of media, and that is why I have chose this age group. Then platform specific, in review of literature, I had noticed that they generalize as a social media, but in my study I have taken each social media individually so that I can study like which social media has a lot of consumption on body image perceptions, and there is a need of localized interventions as well for the Mangalore region. And my objectives were to investigate the relationship between social media and body dissatisfaction, and to evaluate the applicability of the cultivation theory. And the third one was the moderating factors. Maybe it might be self-esteem, social comparison, or internalization of the beauty ideals that gives a impact of social media on the body image perception. The methodology what I used was a quantitative approach with a convenient sampling technique, because convenient sampling gives us accessibility to the people who are willing to answer our questionnaire. And participants were, I had mentioned priorly, and sample size was, I had targeted of 300, and actual respondents I got of 337, out of which 54 were late adolescents and 283 were emerging adults. Data collection tool. So it was a self-administered Google form, and this was chosen because there should be an anonymity whenever a person fills, because body image is a topic which is very personal for people. So that is how I had chosen Google form. And I had sections like demographics, social media use, and body image perceptions, Likert scale questions. And I had done a reliability test as well. So I had got 0.713 alpha, which is an acceptable reliability test. And ethical considerations were also looked on. Like I had taken informed consent of people while filling the form, and confidentiality also was mentioned, and secured storage of the data also was done. Could you move on to findings? Yeah, so major findings of my studies are like Instagram and Snapchat showed a little relationship with body dissatisfaction, whereas Facebook, YouTube and Twitter did not show any body dissatisfaction signs. And women were more likely to feel pressure on the body dissatisfaction while they consume the content from the social media than men. And confidence in appearance was closely related to the self-satisfaction. And application of cultivation theory, repeated exposure to certain types of content, people when they repeatedly saw those contents, they tend to have that comparison with the content. And older adolescents, they engage more frequently and they compare themselves than the emerging adults. And contents about diets, weight loss and body changes were identified a lot, and that led to the pressure on the people. Then about the moderating factors, frequent comparison with celebrities or influencers was also high due to the comparison levels of the people, like the adults and adolescents. And there was a relationship between social media and body dissatisfaction as well. So to conclude, I want to say that in gender, obviously my study showed that women were more vulnerable to body dissatisfaction levels, and late adolescents were also more influenced towards those contents. And there was a celebrity comparisons as well, like frequent comparisons with celebrities were done so that they matched the standards. And lastly, I want to recommend for the future researchers that they can expand their research beyond Mangalore, because this gives a generalized idea only about this particular region. They can expand towards in and around Mangalore so that they can know what is the perseverance of the adults in that area. And we can use more larger samples. This was 337. If we use more larger samples, we would enhance the generalizability of the results. And we could use mixed methods like qualitative and quantitative so that it would be for the deeper understanding of our research. And other theoretical frameworks also could be used, excluding cultivation theory. Thank you.
Very good presentation and well thought out. So your data analysis is basically based on correlation.
Yes.
Yes. So Okay, that was my only question. Thank you so much and all the best. It's a very good innovative study for body image, and in context, you have put it into context in Mangalore. That was very interesting because there has been a lot of study on body image and gender. So putting it into the context of Mangalore and studying it in Mangalore is a very unique perspective. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
The next presenter is Shruti. They'll be presenting on the role of media in shaping mental health and education.
Good evening, my entire presence here. Myself, Shruti Jindala. I am from Dr. NSAM First Year College, Elanka, from Bangalore. This is a joint paper along with my professor, Basappa Bangari, titled The Role of Media Shaping Mental Health and Education. Introduction. Modern days, including newspapers, TV, YouTube, and social media, key influence learning mental health behind traditional classrooms. Media plays a significant role shaping knowledge, attitudes, and behavior, particularly students' learning and development. Review of literacy. I have taken across by many articles, and it is a highlightly correlation between social media and mental health. Neither, while social media provides opportunities and connections and influence depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem for the students. Aim of research. How different forms of media affect students' mental health by learning and evaluating media literacy by improving positive and negative effects. Objectives of research. To analyze effective of media mental health well-being of students, to estimate role of media informal and self-defined learning, to look of media and learning, anxiety and success, to analyze the effect of media on self-esteem, emotional well-being. Methodology and slope of limitation. The research focus on implementing of media of mental health and education, specifically context of student life in India. The limitation of students and reveals secondary literacy while does not encrypt and real-time events dynamically role of media as observed in India for all the implementers. This is a main content of my research paper. The authors implied that media literacy and negative effect can be made by the any multiple medias for actioning for different elements and awareness for among the young people. It may provide tools for negative, can also be a positive influence by the media. Research finding. Media is an act of additional and students learning behind the classrooms. Social media provides emotional support for anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. Students should meet literacy, evaluate critical and digital content effectively. Students who have equal access by digital media contributing grasp of education and experience. By this, I conclude my study of highlights due to impact of media education and mental health by being positive and negative outcomes for the students. Media by learning opportunities behind formal institution and promoting self-direct access by deriving knowledge. When you use media supports mental well-being, providing emotional and outcomes by valuations. However, they extend social media can explore identity and knowledge. Thank you.
Hello, very well done with your presentation. Is this your first presentation? Yeah, I'd love to congratulate you on that, and I'll definitely not going into the research questions, you're too young to answer them. And I would like to congratulate Basappa sir for preparing them so well. Yeah, for this particular conference. So, congratulations to you and your co-author for this particular. And one question I just like to ask, whatever you told, have you experienced it yourself? So any experience from your own life where media has done something for you?
Actually, media, like, I never use for many things. Only like YouTube for few things and Google for few informations I use it. I never use of Instagrams or social medias.
Oh, that's very rare nowadays. You've come from a very rare breed. Good. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the next
Thank you.
question.
Thanks a lot.
The next presenter is Mr. Prakash. They'll be presenting on theatre pedagogy, enhancing education through performance.
Hello, my name is Prakash. My topic is theatre pedagogy, enhancing education through performance. It comes under the sub-theme of media, society and policy. This paper primarily explores significance of theatre pedagogy in individual and societal development. Despite being theatre is benefits, it's not practiced in most of the places. We know about theatre pedagogy, but not really everybody practices. So another objective is also importance of theatre in child development. This also talks about the history and development of the theatre pedagogy practices in India. So I'll skip to the methodology part. This paper follows the exploratory methodology, and I have a case study of 8 different NGOs or schools which incorporates theatre pedagogy. One of it is Bangalore Little Theatre, Kutum Foundation, New Delhi, the National School of Drama Extension Program, Speak Mecca, UNICEF's Life Skill Education through Theatre Program, Gillo Repertory Theatre, Mumbai, Little Theatre, Chennai, Katha Theatre in Education, Dwarka. These are the different organizations and NGOs which follow this method, and I have studied about these organizations. First one is Bangalore Little Theatre Kutum Foundation. They have been organizing different workshops and training for theatre pedagogy facilitators and students. One of the important problem or the challenge was there was no formal education for the theatre educators. So this organization has been training educators as well as students, and they try to integrate dramatic storytelling and with the curriculum topics, which makes the learning interesting and more effective. So through this workshop, we come to know that students develop cognitive skills and empathy. Teachers report that increased classroom engagement. So next topic is teacher and student perspective. Because of the theatre pedagogy's effectiveness, passive classrooms become very dynamic. There is a participation, there is interaction, and a lot of life skills and social skills are developed through this methodology. And students have reported that learning is more enjoyable and relatable because pedagogy also incorporates different art forms. Next is emotional and cognitive engagement. In terms of cognitive engagement, this has proved to enhance different types of intelligence, that is linguistic, interpersonal and body kinesthetics, because it is not sitting there and listening, it's an active participation there. Well, in terms of emotional engagement, we can understand that there is empathy, resilience and emotional regulation. Next, there are some challenges. Institutional integration, one of it is that primary challenge is that there is no formal recognition for this pedagogy. Even though it is mentioned in new education policy, it is not very clear the definition of this particular methodology, and educators lack the training to apply or follow this particular method. And also there is a big gap in traditional method. Traditional method focuses on group approach, it is not individual. That theatre pedagogy is very one-on-one, or it focuses on one particular student, which is more effective, more beneficial, but due to the large syllabus, facilitators or faculty cannot implement these pedagogy methods as theatre. And also another problem is that some of the subjects cannot be used. Like maths has to be taught in a traditional way. Theatre pedagogy has to be implemented in terms of language and some subjects only. And also, like I mentioned, policy gaps. There is a gap between policy's intention and application. The guidelines of new education policy is not very clear because there is no, it is mentioned that art implication should be there. There should be art element, but there is no fund allotment. There is no framework. There is no training. There is no facilities. So there is a gap in terms of application. And like I told you, some of the models that I studied, one more is Gillo Repertory from Mumbai. They have been operating from 2009. They have carved a niche called Theatre for Young Audience. So along with this particular NGO, I have gone through a few more, 8 to 9 NGOs. I'll quickly talk about the challenges. Institutional resistance because not everyone wants this particular method, lack of trained educators, inadequate infrastructure and resources, curriculum constraints because of the large syllabus like I mentioned, and socio-cultural barriers. And future recommendation would be policy integration, which has to be very practical, and teacher training and capacity building programs for all the facilitators. Curriculum design should be flexible, infrastructure and resource allotment, community and parental engagement, and inclusive practices and research and evaluation. This is some of the research findings that I found while doing this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Prakash sir, for a very innovative study, and it's very interesting to see that theatre coming into practical orientation, and with the new education policy that we have, we need that integration, we need to bridge that gap. So because I know you personally, I'm asking this question, as an educator and as a performer, so where do you think, because I have met so many performers, they believe that performance doesn't come from strict education. It comes from somewhere, which a talent which you already have. And while educators say that without learning how bhavas and rasas work, according to Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra, you cannot know what theatre is. So where do we draw that line?
So I think it's not something people tell that you need to have some skills beforehand. Theatre is a very, very wide spectrum. I think everybody can learn some things from this art form, just that they need to be involved themselves. That's it. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
The next presenter is Atulya Nair. They'll be presenting on political rhetoric and media narratives on rape, analyzing the impact of political communication and media narratives on public perception in India.
Good evening to one and all present here, respected moderator and everyone present in the audience. I am Atulya Nair, a final year student pursuing my bachelor's in journalism and mass communication from Presidency University, Bangalore. As rightly quoted by Mr. Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message. In today's interconnected world, this statement resonates more profoundly than ever. The media, in its various forms, isn't merely a conduit of information. It actively shapes the very message that it conveys, influencing how we perceive and understand the world and the happenings around us. Think about it. The way a story is framed, the language used, the images chosen, the elements, they don't just present facts. They actually construct a narrative. And these narratives have the power to shape our perspectives, influence our opinions, and also drive our actions. This power is a tremendous opportunity and a significant responsibility. This brings me to the core of my research paper titled Political Rhetoric and Media Narratives on Rape, analyzing the impact of political communication and media narratives on public perception in India. In India, like many other parts of the world, rape
a deeply entrenched social issue, often surrounded by complex political rhetoric and media narratives. My research delves into how political communication and media representations and narratives contribute to shaping public perception of such a heinous crime. I examine how specific language, framing, and narratives employed by politicians and various media outlets can influence the societal attitudes and public perception. So, as you can see, the objective and my research question is to analyze how political rhetoric and media narratives converge to shape public perception and attitude towards race. Next. So I have included the case study of the 2012 gang rape case, which is famously known as the Nirbhaya case in my paper. And we all know how media was involved and like the capital of our nation itself came to a standstill. So it shows, how media's narratives can, make the public take action or protest against something that is unfair or unjust. Next. The methodology I employed is quantitative analysis, and I performed a survey using Google Forms. The data collection method, as I mentioned, was an online survey using Google Forms, and the questions were based and prepared on the basis of the Likert scale. The sampling method I employed is non-probability sampling method, and the sampling has been done through survey, and the survey was done among various individuals who consume information through political discourse and the media. The data analysis, again, I have employed the statistical method where I have included descriptive statistics, mean, median, mode and standard deviation. And in order to prove my hypothesis, I have also used the statistical test of regression and ANOVA test. And I could also find a moderate positive correlation which suggested that political discourse and media and public perception are closely linked. The ethical considerations were informed consent in terms of the Google Forms and the survey, and confidentiality and data security, and minimizing harm to the participants in the survey. This is a bibliometric analysis chart. So as you can see, the first picture is an overlay visualization. So it illustrates the simultaneous presence of various keywords in my research, which is political rhetoric, media, and rape. And if, you can notice that the central term here is violence against women, and it's further connected to several subtopics such as gender violence, sexual abuse, etc. The second pic is density visualization, which illustrates the frequency and relationship and the complex interplay of political rhetoric, the mass media, and rape. And the third picture is of network visualization. This illustrates every term pertaining to political rhetoric, media, and rape. And the key areas of concentration within the research are the mass media, political rhetoric, and rape. Again, these are bibliometric data charts of documents by year, by subject area, by author, by affiliation, by country or territory, and by types of documents in this area of research. The limitations of my study, firstly, is reliance on self-reported data. As I mentioned, it was primary data. I collected data through a Google survey. Then generalization of the data because of the sampling size. Then the purposive judgmental sampling method. The significant findings are that there was a significant correlation between political rhetoric, media representation and narrative, and public perception of rape of the people in India. Then again, emotional rhetoric and persuasive language often influences the public opinion towards this heinous crime. And it also at times reinforces harmful stereotypes and emphasizes on victim blaming. The implications of my studies are as follows. One is public perception of rape, policy influence, media responsibility, political accountability, and communication strategy, and how media and political rhetoric can be used as an advocacy tool to bring in a positive social impact.
Scope for further research, as mentioned, are comparative studies in terms of international or interstate studies, historical evolution of narratives and how it has been used as like a diplomatic tool over the years, and demographic specific perceptions, impact on the victim or survivor behaviors, social media's role again in, awareing and educating the public, then narratives and policy outcomes in terms of laws and programs, and effectiveness of counter narrative strategies, political discourse during elections, etc. So my research underscores the urgent need for a more responsible and ethical approach to political communication and media reporting on sexual violence. And by critically examining the power of language and narrative, we can work together fostering a society that is more just, equitable and supportive. And we all would agree to this point that media has the power to make or break a nation and the perception and opinions of the people. So it needs to be professed in the utmost ethical and responsible way. Having said that, I would like to wind up my presentation. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you, Atulya, for your wonderful presentation. We'll carry forward this discussion later. We have like cultural program now. So thank you so much, Atulya. We'll move on to the cultural program for NICO's NITO Institute of Communication Conference. And I'll hand it over to the MC for the Cultural Fest, and I will request the logistics team to clear the stage for the cultural program. Thank you.
ರಜನಿ 9
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the culture program